The year 2000 ushered in a wave of optimism for the future of the Internet. Dot-com startups were thriving, and established tech companies seemed destined to dominate the new century. In this climate of euphoria, America Online, AOL, then the most prominent Internet service provider, pursued a bold initiative, acquiring the venerable media conglomerate Time Warner. Valued at around $165 billion when announced, this deal was heralded as the merger of the century, promising a media tech behemoth that would redefine how people consumed news, entertainment, and online services. Yet within a few short years, the combined entity known as AOL Time Warner became a cautionary tale, characterized by culture clashes, a plummeting stock price, and disillusioned executives. Today, we'll delve into the factors that drove the merger, the heady optimism that accompanied it, and the sobering lessons gleaned from one of the largest corporate failures in modern history. In the mid to late 1990s, America Online stood as a primary gateway to the Internet for millions of users. With its ubiquitous "You've Got Mail" greeting, AOL brought email, chat rooms, and curated content to households around the world, often via slow, dial-up connection. Yet for many people, it was the first experience of the digital frontier. AOL's user-friendly interface and marketing savvy, including mailing out millions of free trial CDs, attracted a subscriber base that reached over 26 million by the end of the decade. Financially, AOL's success soared on advertising revenue from its proprietary platform and fees collected from dial-up subscriptions. Its market capitalization ballooned into the tens of billions of dollars, placing it squarely among the tech giants of the era, next to Microsoft and newly emerging Internet darlings like Yahoo. AOL executives, led by CEO Steve Case and President Bob Pittman, saw an opportunity to leverage AOL's pipes into a broader ecosystem of content, turning the ISP into a comprehensive media empire. Time Warner, on the other hand, was a titan of traditional media. Formed in 1990 by the merger of Time Incorporated, the publisher behind Time Magazine, Fortune, Sports Illustrated, and others, and Warner Communications, owner of Warner Brothers Film Studios, Warner Music, and a host of other entertainment assets, the company offered a powerful suite of brands. From HBO to CNN and from Warner Brothers film franchises to a robust cable network business, Time Warner arguably sat at the pinnacle of mainstream media influence. However, the late 1990s presented new challenges for old media. As Internet adoption accelerated, questions emerged about the future of print magazines, linear television, and terrestrial radio. Media executives recognized that going digital was not optional. Some form of digital strategy would be critical for survival. Time Warner's leadership, including then CEO Gerald Levin, knew the company had unmatched content, but they lacked a seamless digital distribution channel to exploit the Internet's rapid expansion. The logic behind AOL's interest in Time Warner was straightforward. AOL needed fresh, high-quality content to keep subscribers engaged and ward off new rivals. Meanwhile, Time Warner needed a robust online distribution system to stay relevant in the digital age. On paper, the deal spelled synergy, unifying an Internet powerhouse with a top-tier media conglomerate to create a one-stop shop for delivering news, music, film, and entertainment to online consumers. The timing seemed opportune. Global financial markets were bullish, driven by the dot-com boom. Many analysts believed that new media companies would inevitably eclipse old models, so forging an alliance with a digital leader like AOL could propel a traditional media giant headlong into the future. The stage was set for what would become the largest corporate merger to date. On January 10, 2000, AOL and Time Warner rocked the business world by announcing their intention to merge in an all-stock deal valued at approximately $165 billion. Steve Case would serve as chairman of the combined entity, with Gerald Levin as CEO. CNN, HBO, Warner Brothers, Time Magazine, and other Time Warner brands would join forces with AOL's dial-up empire under one corporate umbrella known initially as AOL Time Warner. Wall Street reacted with exuberance, at least at first. Many observers described the merger as a transformational event, praising its potential to dominate both the means of content delivery via AOL's Internet infrastructure and the content itself through Time Warner's library of magazines, TV networks, films, and music labels. Executives on both sides offered ambitious predictions for how the merger would reshape consumer behavior. They spoke of interactive TV, where viewers could not only watch HBO shows but also instantly order merchandise related to those shows through AOL's platform. They imagined digital magazine subscriptions seamlessly pushed to AOL's user base, the co-branding of AOL with iconic channels like CNN, and new forms of online advertising that would leverage Time Warner's vast audience reach. Moreover, synergy targets were set, optimistic forecasts of cost savings and revenue enhancement. The most cited figure was around $1 billion in synergy, an alluring estimate designed to justify the hefty merger price. In many eyes, AOL Time Warner symbolized the holy grail of convergence, bridging the gap between content creation and internet distribution. The timing of the deal couldn't have been more telling. In early 2000, the Nasdaq stock index soared to unprecedented heights, largely driven by tech and internet companies that had yet to prove consistent profitability. AOL's inflated share price provided the leverage to buy a behemoth like Time Warner primarily with stock rather than cash. This environment also shaped the mindset of boards and shareholders, who believed that combining forces before the bubble potentially burst was a strategic necessity. Hindsight would show that this mania concealed serious cracks beneath the surface. Shortly after the merger closed in January 2001, cracks began to appear. AOL's corporate culture was fast-moving, entrepreneurial, and fueled by Internet-era optimism. At AOL's Dulles, Virginia, campus, casual dress, quick decision-making, and risk-taking were standard. The ideology prized growth and user acquisition above all, often at the expense of rigorous profitability analysis. Time Warner's headquarters in New York City, however, operated with the discipline and decorum of a legacy media empire. Consensus building, structured hierarchies, and methodical strategy shaped management decisions. Many Time Warner executives viewed the internet hype with skepticism, aware that dot-com mania could be fleeting, and that quality content production remained costly and time-consuming. With Gerald Levin as CEO and Steve Case as chairman, the question soon arose: who really steered the company's daily operation? Many Time Warner managers resisted adopting AOL's approach, wary of ceding too much control to the upstart new media side. AOL executives, for their part, criticized Time Warner's bureaucratic style as sluggish and antiquated, arguing it impeded the nimble innovation needed in the digital age. As months passed, the tension over strategic priorities worsened. Some Time Warner divisions, like Turner Broadcasting and Warner Brothers, felt overshadowed by AOL's presence, while AOL staff grumbled that Time Warner's top brass didn't understand the online environment's speed and disruption. Meanwhile, integrated projects, like bringing high-profile CNN content behind AOL paywalls or merging AOL's instant messaging capabilities with Time Warner's channels, stalled due to departmental turf battles and a lack of clear direction from the top. By the end of 2001, it became evident that the promised synergies were not materializing at the pace or scale anticipated. Collaboration efforts stumbled as executives from each side protected their budgets and operational autonomy. In many cases, Time Warner's content arms remained locked into traditional distribution deals that limited AOL's ability to exploit exclusivity. AOL, still reliant on dial-up, faced stiffer competition from cable broadband providers, ironically, some of which were Time Warner's own cable asset. This organizational discord also filtered down to employees, who grew increasingly demoralized as news spread of corporate infighting, potential layoffs, and the evaporation of stock-based incentives once thought destined to make mid-level managers wealthy. By mid to late 2000, tech stocks witnessed dramatic decline. The Nasdaq index, which had peaked at over 5,000 in March of that year, plummeted steadily. Startups collapsed, and even large internet firms saw their valuations cut in half or worse. AOL, once perched atop a high share price, now faced increasing skepticism from investors questioning its ability to sustain advertising revenue in a contracting market. When the merger finalized in 2001, the combined company's stock traded under the AOL Time Warner ticker AOLTW. Immediately, it felt the aftershocks of the dot-com downturn. Advertisers who had paid premium rates for banner ads on AOL either folded or slashed marketing budget. Internet subscription growth slowed. At the same time, Time Warner's film and publishing divisions had to cope with a broader economic pullback exacerbated by the September 11th attacks in 2001. Amid the broad tech meltdown, AOL Time Warner had to reevaluate the lofty goodwill assets on its books, remnants of the inflated valuations AOL used in acquiring Time Warner. GAAP, generally accepted accounting principle, required the company to test these assets for impairment. Over the next couple of years, the company recognized staggering write-downs, culminating in multiple multi-billion-dollar write-offs that battered the balance sheet. In a 2002 financial statement, the newly merged company reported a net loss of over $98 billion, one of the largest corporate losses ever recorded. This figure largely stemmed from writing down intangible assets, demonstrating just how far reality had diverged from the sky-high valuations behind the original merger. Such colossal losses further eroded investor confidence, sending AOL Time Warner's share price into a downward spiral. The high-profile meltdown of AOL Time Warner triggered a wave of executive shakeups. Gerald Levin, who had championed the merger from Time Warner's side, stepped down as CEO in early 2002. Steve Case vacated the chairman role in 2003, acknowledging that the transition had been far rockier than he had ever anticipated. Bob Pittman, once seen as a key architect of AOL's success, left after internal disputes over strategy and performance. Investors clamored for new leadership that could steady the ship. Dick Parsons, a seasoned Time Warner executive, took over as CEO, attempting to quell internal strife and restore confidence on Wall Street. Over time, the name AOL Time Warner was quietly dropped, reverting to Time Warner, reflecting a desire to distance the storied media brand from AOL's tarnished digital image. One of the starkest critiques of the merger centers on the fact that AOL's inflated stock was its currency for buying Time Warner. In an environment where internet stock valuations hinged more on user growth than on hard profitability metrics, AOL's share price soared. Yet as soon as the market corrected, that currency looked woefully inadequate for acquiring a major conglomerate. Many shareholders questioned how Time Warner's board allowed so much real corporate value to be swapped for shares in a company reliant on ephemeral dot-com exuberance. While financial due diligence is standard in any acquisition, cultural due diligence is equally vital in a merger of equals. Critics argued that the boards and top executives of AOL and Time Warner spent insufficient time working through how to integrate two vastly different corporate cultures. The friction after the merger could have been anticipated had they probed more deeply into each other's organizational structures and norms. The resulting discord contributed significantly to the breakdown in synergy realization. AOL's dial-up service was already facing obsolescence by 2000, as cable and DSL broadband began displacing the slow speed and limited capacity of dial-up modem. Yet AOL executives were slow to adapt, hoping to milk dial-up's monthly subscription fees for as long as possible. By the time broadband penetration accelerated, AOL was left behind, diminishing its user base and, by extension, undercutting the very premise of limitless distribution for Time Warner content. In theory, the vertical integration so lauded by media CEOs rarely materialized at AOL Time Warner. Divisions functioned as silos, protective of their turf, revenue streams, and brand identity. With no unified strategy, cross-promotion opportunities slipped away, and deals that would have forced collaboration remained on the drawing board. From CNN's archives to Warner Brothers' film distribution channels to AOL's online services, these assets rarely blended in ways that would drive a perfect synergy. Instead, they ran parallel, occasionally crossing paths, but never merging into a cohesive ecosystem that drew on the best of both worlds. For AOL, the failed merger spelled the start of a precipitous decline from internet giant to also-ran. It remained somewhat profitable in the short term through subscription revenues, but as broadband adoption soared, new users bypassed AOL's walled garden approach, favoring open and faster internet connection. Advertisers, once captive to AOL's user base, shifted budgets to Google, Yahoo, and eventually Facebook. Attempts to pivot to free, ad-driven services were half-hearted or too late, and AOL never regained the commanding position it once held. Eventually, AOL was spun off from Time Warner in 2009 as an independent company, far smaller and less influential than in its heyday. Over subsequent years, AOL pursued digital media acquisitions and rebrands, culminating in Verizon's purchase of AOL in 2015 for a fraction of what the merged AOL Time Warner was once worth. Time Warner, for its part, spent much of the 2000s and 2010s shedding divisions to refocus its strategic vision. In 2003, it dropped AOL from its name, reverting to Time Warner. The music division was spun off, becoming Warner Music Group, while Time Warner Cable was separated to operate independently. By 2018, an even leaner Time Warner, primarily focused on film, TV, and publishing, was acquired by AT&T, another massive telecom giant seeking synergy with entertainment properties. The cycle, ironically, echoed some of the same distribution plus content rhetoric that had defined AOL Time Warner, though under a different set of market conditions. Gerald Levin's legacy as Time Warner's CEO remains tightly bound to the ill-fated deal. Though he led Time Warner to success in the 1990s, the AOL merger overshadowed earlier achievements. Steve Case, once hailed as a visionary who brought America online, left with a tarnished reputation. Nonetheless, both men publicly acknowledged mistakes, with Case later conceding that the merger never should have happened. Bob Pittman, who had served as AOL's president and co-COO of the merged entity, left in the aftermath as well, though he later found success in ventures like iHeartMedia. Others from the combined empire moved on to various roles across the media landscape, often citing their experiences at AOL Time Warner as a sobering lesson in corporate integration. Business schools and management experts frequently cite AOL Time Warner as the poster child for misguided mergers. It encapsulates a myriad of pitfalls: overinflated valuations, cultural mismatches, strategic drift, and reliance on stock market euphoria rather than sustainable operational plans. The fiasco underscores how synergy alone cannot justify a merger unless there is a plausible execution path and a genuine cultural alignment that allows the newly merged entity to function smoothly. The AOL-Time Warner merger stands as a reminder that deals made at the peak of a market frenzy often unravel when optimism fades. While some might argue that timing is everything, in this instance, timing created unrealistic valuations and pressured executives to rush a colossal merger. Corporations must evaluate deals even-handedly, anticipating downturns or industry shifts that could upend lofty assumptions. No matter how compelling the financial logic, a merger's success often boils down to intangible factors like corporate culture, leadership style, and staff morale. Thoroughly vetting these elements and establishing a clear blueprint for integration should be as high a priority as ensuring the numbers add up. The shortfall in synergy at AOL Time Warner was not merely about external market conditions. It was about how internal teams failed to unite under a shared vision. Though the dot-com era is past, markets still periodically experience bubbles, especially in fast-growing sectors like crypto, electric vehicles, or artificial intelligence. The AOL Time Warner experience reminds us that inflated stock valuations can be ephemeral. When they crash, they can leave acquisitions hopelessly over-leveraged and hamper the strategic aims behind them. Many subsequent deals, like Comcast's acquisition of NBC Universal or AT&T's purchase of Time Warner, replicate the distribution meets content logic. Indeed, there is a rationale in owning both pipelines and products. But success depends on whether the acquiring entity can adapt to the fundamental business of content creation, or vice versa, without stifling creativity or imposing conflicting priorities. The AOL Time Warner fiasco was a testament to how simply owning distribution channels and content libraries is no guarantee of synergy if they do not integrate productively. The saga of AOL Time Warner remains a pivotal reference point in corporate history, illustrating how a deal that captured the public's imagination can implode when lofty dreams collide with reality. Announced at the dawn of the millennium, the merger was meant to embody the future, an unstoppable giant uniting the best of online services with the world's premier media brand. Yet, within just a few years, that vision lay in tatters, weighed down by cultural rifts, missed opportunities, and a swiftly deflated tech bubble. For investors, employees, and executives alike, the experience offers sobering lessons. It challenges the notion that bigger is always better, or that a first-mover advantage in technology automatically translates into sustainable dominance. It also underscores that synergy requires more than press releases and branding slogans. It demands deep structural alignment, mutual respect between merging entities, and an execution plan robust enough to weather economic storms. In a sense, AOL Time Warner's collapse presaged a broader rethinking of digital media strategy throughout the 2000s and 2010s. As new digital platforms rose, Google, YouTube, social media networks, AOL Time Warner seemed stuck in a transitional era, never fully bridging the gap between the old and new. While both companies moved on, shedding divisions and rebranding, the memory of the world's largest merger at the time lives on as a cautionary tale. Even decades later, business leaders studying this case continue to question what might have been if the synergy had worked. Could AOL Time Warner really have become the unstoppable, fully converged media tech empire once promised? Or was it always a deal too large, too complex, and too reliant on market euphoria to ever stand a chance? Perhaps the final verdict is that real success comes not from chasing the biggest headlines or the highest valuations, but from understanding the underlying mechanics of one's business and fostering a unifying culture that allows those mechanics to flourish. As the digital landscape continues to evolve, the ghosts of AOL Time Warner remain a silent reminder. Sometimes, no amount of brand power, user base, or hopeful synergy can overcome cultural and economic mismatch.